Good afternoon, everyone. Very happy to welcome you all to our team showcase, our capstone event of Open for Anti-Racism's Year 4. A huge congratulations to all of the schools that have participated in this year's program. Today we have a list of 8 colleges that are presenting their action plans and their experience of OFAR. We have Saracoso College, College of the Canyons, Contra Costa College, Cosumnes River College, Fullerton, LA Valley, Palomar, and Taft College. I'd like to give a shout out to all of our advisory coaches, Mari Tez, Elisa, Gayatri, Alan, Deborah, Anna, Cindy, and Hosna. Thank you all for your work over the semester, or over the year rather, helping to steward and guide this process. And a shout out to our program team, James, Liz, Joy, Kim, and again, Mari Tez. So if you have any comments or feedback or questions for our teams as we go through the final showcases, I encourage you to put them on this great feedback deck that Marit has created in Google Slides for us to use. Also, if you see any opportunities for collaboration, that would be great. You can go ahead and scan the QR code here. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. First up, we have Saracoso Community College getting us started today. Their coach was Mari Tez, team leader Deanna Campbell, team members Nikisha Cummings, Kimberly Kelly, Tyrone Ledford, Devin Mosley, and Dawn Ward.
Greetings, OFAR community. My name is Professor Nikisha Cummings, and this year I've had the honor and the privilege to serve as a Saracoso Community College OFAR team lead. OFAR is an experiential growth process which both evokes and challenges one's current pedagogy and practices. It pushes practitioners to engage with students on a holistic level. This year-long journey forged the path of the following 6 faculty members: Dr. Deanna Campbell, Business Professor; Tyrone Ledford, Child Development Professor; Devin Mosley, Counselor; Dawn Ward, Paralegal Studies Professor; and Kimberly Kelly, Kinesiology, Health Sciences Professor. Together, we experience a collective curriculum metamorphosis across 6 disciplines. We directly impacted over 100 students. Today, we want to showcase the impact that we've had, and we welcome the ripple effect, not only for our campus, but for our collective community.
At Saracoso Community College, our anti-racist strategy involved innovation, participation, collaboration, and implementation. Our innovation came from our approach of integrating technology, pedagogy, curriculum, and syllabi. Some of the technology that we used was AI, and majority of us were able to create a liquid syllabus for our course rooms. Our participation, we actually had a couple of our admin come and participate, showing that they were allies in the work and the process that we're doing. Collaboration was between faculty, students, staff, and administration in this process of building an inclusive and anti-racist campus environment. And then lastly was our implementation, which is the strategies that we embody, essentially embodying anti-racist pedagogy and inclusive campus environment mindsets.
The Saracoso team involved students in our OFAR efforts through creating liquid syllabuses, which enabled us to connect with students, encouraging and inviting engagement. incorporating anti-racist curriculum, which included representation through diverse images, articles describing marginalized experiences and perspectives, and theories from non-white, non-Eurocentric authors. Student-led curriculum and knowledge development were demonstrated by assignments in 2 courses. Students researched non-white theorists in child development, and their assignments were open published. In a research methods course, students were both researcher and participant in cultivating new knowledge through student-led focus groups examining the impact of diverse images in educational resources and materials. Learning collaboratively occurred in personal finance discussions about how each student has navigated and participated in biased financial systems. Soliciting student feedback improved the courses, and incorporating renewable assignments, as I mentioned above, and authentic assignments such as student-generated study tips in a law course, and personal budgets and investment plans in a personal finance course, as well as encouraging students to choose their preferred assignment medium, including video, audio, PowerPoint, or poster presentations in a health science course, enhanced involvement. Overall, increased student involvement was one of the most rewarding aspects of our OFAR experience.
Now we're focused on our impact on the institution. Cerro Coso covers over 18,000 square miles within Inyo, Mono, and Kern counties with the main campus in Ridgecrest. We worked hard to develop our team and have a faculty from diverse disciplines. Having 6 faculty members from 6 different disciplines in both letters and science and career technical education participating in OFAR has been really important to create as much awareness about OFAR as possible across the institution. Not only did we want diverse faculty backgrounds, but also content and methods of instructions. Our team members represented each modality, which we also use to help assess our courses within Cerro Coso, and these include remote campus sites, our incarcerated student education program, and teaching online or on campus at the various campus locations. We felt that this further enabled spreading of OFAR practices and adapting our knowledges into actions. We also started sharing and growing with 2 team members participating in the Faculty Student Development Institute hosted by our Diversity and Inclusion Director and our Dean of Letters and Science, and offered to share out our OFAR practices and strategies and invited that team as well as our deans to one of our presentations with OFAR. We are also planning various methods to share out within the coming semesters, and I'll leave that to our next presenter to share out our future endeavors for the college.
And we found some really low-hanging fruit. Right off the bat, as faculty members, we can support our Diversity Inclusion Office. This is actually a new office for Cerro Coso, and I know many of us still haven't had the opportunity to really dive deep into what Bezabel is doing for our students. Second is the continuation of our open educational resources, ZTC degrees, and the POCR process, providing a huge savings for students and thus eliminating some of those barriers. And last is our Fall Flex presentation. I know each of us is excited about presenting what we've learned throughout this semester with OFAR. Thank you so much for your time.
We are now going to discuss the impact we wish to have on our institution in the future. I like to call it the 3 C's: classrooms and course material, campus life, and co-hosting. For classrooms and course material, our goal is for faculty to be using anti-racist practices and open pedagogy across all of our campuses. Also utilizing resources such as OER textbooks and ZTC funds to help create syllabi and also to help us go through the POCR process to get our courses OEI approved. For campus life, our goal is for underrepresented faculty and staff to feel more valued and welcomed through asserted and intentional efforts by our college. This indeed will help boost the morale of our college and help all of our faculty and staff feel valued. Co-hosting. It is very important for us to create opportunities for our students to co-host webinars, trainings, and workshops to help give them or create a comprehensive approach towards learning. Students learn best when they are engaged and are curators of the information. So our goal is to help students engage more and feel more connected to our faculty and the college as a whole.
Next on our list is College of the Canyons with Coach Deborah Crumpton. Team lead is Pamela. Team members are Katie, Julianne, Graciela, Gabriella, and Robert.
Hello and welcome. We are the College of the Canyons OFAR team. I'm Graciela Martinez, CalWorks EOPS Care Counselor at College of the Canyons. What OFAR has created is a safe space to make authentic and meaningful connections with colleagues with a social justice perspective. It was an impactful process and has allowed for self-reflection, the importance of decolonization, access to truth of knowledge, and building community. Also, to learn about the vocabulary and resources that will be vital to bridge over, to bravely continue creating anti-racist curriculum and DEI work on our campus. Personally, I enjoyed the discussions about transformative pedagogies in creating anti-racist curriculum, assignments, and endorsement of social justice lens. This process has created a community of support to continue to advocate for students and dismantle racist practices on our campus. It's been a very impactful process for myself, and I appreciate the time and space and resources that was shared with all of us. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Julie.
Hi, my name is Julie Johnson, and I'm a history instructor here at College of the Canyons, as well as one of the faculty co-coordinators for the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning. And we were so excited to incorporate our student voices into our OFAR journey by using open pedagogy and recyclable assignments that really allowed students to have voice into co-creating OER content in some of our classes, or really even using surveys with our students to find out what their experiences were in our classes and how we could better help them along their journey. And now I'd like to hand it over to Robert.
My name is Robert Wanzer. I'm the other faculty co-coordinator for the Center for Excellence in Teaching and Learning here at College of the Canyons, and I teach in the sociology department. In the sociology department in particular, we were trying to make sure that we decolonize our classes as well as our classrooms and the physical spaces. So what that entailed was bringing students into the fold and asking for their input in terms of new flags, removing some of the more problematic stuff that was in our classrooms held over from the past, as well as putting new theorists up on the walls, in addition to the kind of old classical theorists that we had always had up there. As Julie mentioned, we also were very deliberate in updating the sociological canon, as well as some of the historical resources for the history classes. So we were bringing in scholars of more diverse backgrounds, contemporary scholars working in the field today, whose interests and backgrounds align more with that of our students. And so in doing so, we're going to update the OER materials as well. With that, I think I'll turn it over to Katie.
Katie, and I get to work with students in the sociology department as a professor and the chair of the department. And I'm going to talk a little bit about how OFAR has had a positive impact on our institution as a whole. In this opportunity, in this program, we've had the experience of being inspired and encouraged to eradicate a culture of silence and sometimes a culture of fear surrounding racism, and especially as it pertains to institutionalized racism and racism in higher education. One way we have done that, and intentionally so, to promote and nurture students' sense of inclusion and belonging, is to decolonize our classrooms and even start moving toward indigenizing our classrooms and other spaces on campus. So one way we've done that is visual aspects to improve inclusivity and diversity and promote belonging in spaces that have been designed to maintain exclusivity and elitism as it pertains to race and other social variables. In addition, we also have one example of we have an equity-minded practitioners work group at COC comprised of faculty members, staff, and administrators. And we in this group have decided to bring OFAR into equity-minded practitioners and be able to hopefully keep it within equity-minded practitioners to nurture and mentor the next cohort of participants in OFAR at COC. We've come up with some events in this work group, such as teach-ins, hosting teach-ins at COC focused, and sometimes referred to as Occupy COC, focused on anti-racism and social justice. So one was going to be an exhibition on artivism. And we have also invited our coach, Dr. Deborah Crumpton, to come teach in or occupy COC with her incredible knowledge and experience in OFAR and anti-racism in higher education. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Pamela.
Thank you. My name is Pamela Williams-Paez, and I have the pleasure of teaching sociology at College of the Canyons. Moving forward in our institution, we have a tall order to address institutional racism. And as you can see, all of our efforts are quite comprehensive. Everything from decolonizing the syllabus, writing new philosophy of teaching statements, decolonizing the classroom, turning over the canon and shaking it loose to incorporate new voices, and making students the center of our focus. We look forward to, as Katie said, fostering and reaching out to faculty so that they can become part of the 2024-2025 cohort for OFAR. And our goal is to exponentially grow the consciousness of this kind of work at College of the Canyons. Likewise, we have a professional development activity slated for the fall so that we can invite faculty to see our panel discussion with the 6 of us as we share our OFAR work and hopefully recruit some new folks to join us. And it's been a wonderful experience. We've all been empowered by this, and we've all been given language to do the work that we've been doing for quite some time. And it's also helped us broaden our own scope and critique our own work so that we can be better practitioners for our students. And I'd like to now pass it on to Gabriela Muñiz.
Hi, I'm Gabriela Muñiz, and I teach social work and human services. In conclusion, we aim to model anti-racist teaching on our campus and lead discussions with other educators to explore how educational practices can evolve on an institutional level. Our hope is to create a community of educators who not only show up as anti-racist individuals, but who are also committed to implementing anti-racist teaching practices to engage students in a meaningful way. Through OFAR, we have been empowered to continue our individual work in transforming our classrooms, working together to effect change within our departments, and ultimately creating a lasting impact at College of the Canyons. So on behalf of College of the Canyons, we would like to say thank you.
Next up, we have Contra Costa Community College with Coach Alan Leon. Team lead is Jennifer, and team members Jimmy, Mary, Trung, Deva, Devin, and Chandra.
Each semester, I place my classroom policies on my syllabus. My classroom policies read in part as follows. Respect your fellow classmates. Please be aware of the diversity of views and respect those whose opinions may differ from your own. Please do not use any profanity anywhere in your classwork, and please do not use any racial slurs or ethnic slurs anywhere in your classwork. I include that statement as a best practice regarding language and anti-racism.
I aimed for institutional change by using program review to center anti-racism and transformative pedagogy in program goals and outcomes, using structures such as content review to revise course outlines for 13 courses, and creating a fully ZTC degree pathway by 2026. We are working to decolonize psychology. Collaborations with other departments and student groups will be key to our success. One of the first assignments I have is what I call before we start, or sometimes before we begin. And it is a read, watch, contribute, really simple assignment where students first read a little bit about some of the community standards that I have for our course. And then they watch a few short videos on microaggressions. These are kind of fun, easy to watch and understand videos. And then the last video is a short tutorial on what to do when you witness a microaggression. So they can learn some tools to address these occurrences in their everyday life or even in our course. After that, they're asked to contribute to a Padlet. And this one is going to be done anonymously, so students can really share some of their concerns, what they're nervous about talking about, how they think we should handle difficult conversations, or just comment on the videos. They're even free to add items or share stuff. So these comments can last on from semester to semester, so other students can see that a lot of us go through the exact same emotions when dealing with a lot of really difficult topics.
Hi, my name is Devin, and my open pedagogy project involved working on the midterm and final projects for my statistics classes, where students survey their communities on issues that are important or interesting to them and then analyze the data. My big question has been, how can I actually inspire students to see themselves and their communities as relevant in our classroom? And for this project, how can I help them see their work in our class as potentially relevant in their communities? And I realized that I could compile student survey data into a data library and use that data in lab assignments as scaffolding, building up the projects to help students really envision what they could do with these assignments. The data library is currently a Google Drive folder. Here it is. And inside it, there's a contents and licensing page, instructor resources, which include labs and project assignment descriptions and other stuff, and of course the data spreadsheets themselves. And in the contents and licensing file, you can see the Creative Commons license, as well as a list of surveys, text of the questions exactly as it asked them, and the answers that were available. And of course, finally, a link to the data, which is of course just a spreadsheet of data. It doesn't look like much from here, but this can be copied and pasted into whatever statistics software you're using, and then the students can analyze the data that other students from previous classes collected. They can also recreate the same surveys and add to the data set so that we get even more data. Okay, that's it. If you're interested in using or contributing to this project, please contact me. Yay, thank you.
When I was a student at Contra Costa College, I believed that I could transfer to Cal State East Bay. Then it was called Hayward State, thanks to my good grades and faculty support. However, a counselor at Contra Costa College told me that I wasn't smart enough to go to Hayward State, let alone graduate. I was devastated. I left his office fighting back the tears and planning to quit school. My Latina friend, who knew that I was going, was waiting for me, had also received that same discouraging information from that same counselor. My friend shared with me that she had been accepted at UC Berkeley on that same day. The counselor's words, especially coming from an African-American person, had a profound impact on me. The experience motivates me and motivated me to support and to encourage students, which is why I became an instructor. It is also why I wanted to be a part of the OFAR team.
In honor of Black History Month, February 2024, I held a symposium titled The Black Arts Movement Reexamined. I also held an exhibit in our college library titled the Black Arts Movement, remembering the contributions of Black Panthers Bobby Seale, George Mason Murray, and Emory Douglas. In February 2025, I will hold another symposium and library exhibit. I believe that my institution should support Black History Month activities as a best practice regarding the largest racial minority group in the USA and anti-racism.
I see myself creating more shared resources for math and STEM faculty to make it easier for other faculty to learn about and adopt and integrate anti-racist pedagogy and open pedagogy. And I'm super excited to learn more about how we can integrate anti-racism into our course outlines, our student learning outcomes, and faculty evaluations.
Based on my OFAR participation, I hope to have an impact on our institution in the future by developing an inclusive and diverse curriculum that reflects the experiences and contributions of people from various racial and ethnic backgrounds. As a former CCC student, I remember reading textbooks with content that did not reflect who I was, a young, Black, single mom with economic struggles. Therefore, incorporating diverse perspectives, authors, and topics helps to create opportunities for students to feel connected to the content, which becomes a personal and academic experience rooted in our goals of students becoming lifelong learners.
Contra Costa College as an immigrant and first-generation college student, and thanks to the mentorship and wonderful instruction I received from some of my now colleagues in the math department, I'm back as a math instructor here on this campus. I aim to be an anti-racist educator, actively working to promote equality and inclusivity in education, especially in STEM. My goal is to make learning math accessible for all students and to help close the gaps created by COVID-19 and the implementation of AB 705 and AB 1705.
Next up, we have Cosumnes Community College with Coach Gayatri, and the team lead is Gregory, team members Gail, Kelsey, Noah, Farouz, and Jenna.
Cosumnes River College. We share a vision of empowering all our students to succeed in an academic world where the structure of scholarship, teaching, and assessment is constrained by Eurocentrism and white supremacy. We have done this through diversifying the people represented in our course content and incorporating intersectionality in our course material so that each of our students can see themselves as valued members of a community of scholars.
Hello, my name is Gail D'Artes. I teach in the Theater Arts Department at Cosumnes River College. Specifically, I teach a course titled Diversity in American Drama. The course curriculum does not directly address or discuss the way racism and white supremacy have shaped and corrupted our theater institutions in America. Students' questions and curiosity about diversity in American drama guided the creation of a new module, not a moment, but a movement toward an anti-racist American theater. Are we going to be discussing topics like racism? How has the representation of diverse identities evolved in American theater over the years? Is there a problem with the lack of diversity in theater? What could be done to improve this? How can we contribute to promoting inclusivity within the realm of American drama? We began by reading and responding to We See You, White American Theater, the letter that calls out racism and white supremacy in American theater. We also looked at how theater makers responded to the demands in this letter to change business as usual. Students responded to the content in this module primarily within small group discussions, audio recordings, and an investigation of specific theater companies to see how any of their responses to the letter manifested in DEI statements or practices in casting or hiring.
Hi, my name is Fairuz Ahmed Ramirez. I teach English 300 college composition, and this is my Open for Anti-Racism showcase. How did my instruction and students' voices and personal research help fill in gaps of truth and knowledge in the English classroom? Many authors' works centered in English classes are Eurocentric and ethnocentric, representing authors and narratives with a white Western colonizer gaze. Traditional English curriculum has failed to center the voices and lived experiences of the students we are serving. Further, mainstream reporting news consistently presents facts without reporting nuance and complexity, specifically when discussing controversial topics such as race, immigration policy, and war. So, how might oral history stories illuminate truth and knowledge? The Solidarity Project, Preserving an Oral History Story, allowed students to explore this question. After reading and discussing ethical considerations for conducting oral history interviews, students had the options of representing their personal family history juxtaposed against what has already been said or documented, not documented, about their personal histories, to add nuance and complexity to their personal stories. Or students had the option of interviewing someone from a different cultural background to better understand that person's personal story and social positioning in society.
Hi, I'm Greg Beyer, and I teach history at Cosumnes River College. For my OFAR project, one of the things I'm doing is having my students attach their personal identity to the summative assessment that I do in my class. To help my students get to a place where they feel comfortable sharing part of their identity, I have 3 different discussions where I ask them to scaffold their identity and become comfortable sharing that with their classmates before they do it in a theme project. The first one is the introductions discussion, the icebreaker for my class. I call it the identity introduction, and in it I ask my students to take a look at this identity wheel and to share how 1 or 2 of those, why they're important to them. A few weeks later, the next scaffolded identity discussion is what I call identity and learning, and I ask them to share how their identity has affected their learning. And for the third scaffolded identity discussion, I call it identity and memory, and I ask my students to share how they document or how they make memory, I call it a memory marker, of some important events to them. Again, something that's important to them.
So, hello, my name is Noah Gardner, and this was my shotgun approach to OFAR. Many students come into non-majors biology thinking that they hate science, that science isn't for them. So I took a multifaceted approach to centering my students and their identity. I sought to have them this semester not only do science themselves, but also to see why this was, that science has been gatekept by the old guard for centuries and used as a tool of oppression to maintain white supremacy. I sought to make the social issues in biology entrenched into discussions of all topics. Further, I wanted to give students the chance to do some course creation themselves, not only by rewriting some old quiz questions of mine, but also by generating H5P content on Lever Studio, which are now embedded into learning modules for their peers and for future students. Finally, we put these skills together to have students talk about these topics from an informed, scientific perspective. After students practiced plenty talking science to each other, I had students try to practice engaging with someone who is misinformed. That is really hard, I know. And the hope is to empower students by giving them a skill, reading, writing, and talking science that they'll take with them from non-majors biology.
Hello, my name is Kelsey Ford, and I teach English composition. For my OFAR action plan, I focused on open pedagogy and non-disposable assignments, since those concepts were relatively new to me. I attempted to engage students in a new way by having them create a semester-long research project website related to education, racism, and/or stereotyping. My hope is that students will be excited about creating something that combines both visual and written work in a website form that they can share with others within our classroom and beyond. Here is a sample of one of those projects. This project focused around the disparity in infant mortality rates between Black and white women. On the home page, we see the overall claim for the research project, as well as some background on the issue. Each of the subsequent pages develops a particular segment of the research project. On the Why It Matters page, there are 3 evidence-based premises about why this issue is important. On the Attempted Solutions page, the student discusses how the current approaches to this issue are falling short. And on the My Solution page, the student offers a possible proposal for how to address the issue. Lastly, on the Sources page, the student provides her annotated bibliography, a works cited section, and a summary and response essay based on one of her sources. In addition, the About Me section showcases the student's interests and her literacy narrative essay from the beginning of the semester. Such a project has allowed students to share their research with the rest of the class, resulting in class discussions about anti-racist issues that the students care about.
OFAR inspired me to make sweeping changes to my introductory anatomy and physiology course. I created a liquid syllabus using more inclusive language, used more student-centric course policies, wrote my own kind of textbook using Canvas pages and supplementing with an OER textbook. And I populated the course with examples reflecting the diversity of my students and their interests. I also developed more non-disposable assignments, including those that utilize metacognition or open pedagogy, and converted my summative assessment into a group project. Most of my students are going to be allied healthcare professionals, and the group project is intended to help them prepare for their careers by doing a deep dive into a common disease or illness that disproportionately impacts members of our community. The group project helps students develop information literacy. It also helps students develop patient education materials, such as this infographic one group developed on obesity. Students are also asked to develop social media posts that explored the disproportionate impacts of a disease on certain groups, as well as biases that can affect the diagnosis and treatment of those diseases. And here we see an example of one of the social media posts that one of the groups developed this semester. Totally blown away. I plan to use these deliverables from the group project as learning objects for future semesters. Although asynchronous online group work is a challenge, students tell me that they felt the greatest connection to me and their classmates while working on the group project. I hope that they apply what they learned during my course to their future role as advocates for equitable and unbiased healthcare.
Next is Fullerton College with Coach Cindy. Team lead is Gary, and team members Megan, Carol, Anupama, and Michael.
Everyone, my name is Anu Mande and I teach World History and Latin American History. I rewrote many sections of the syllabus to emphasize the importance of an inclusive classroom, shared responsibility, and opportunities to share meaningful experiences. Now, although this is a campus section, students submit all their assignments in Canvas. And this gives students flexibility of time management and flexibility in communication with me and their classmates. Now, I also included information about campus resources that benefit disadvantaged students. Now, we all know that textbooks are important sources of information for students. The problem is that history textbooks present simplified, sanitized, linear summaries, especially about race relations and colonialism. So last year, I worked with a small group of historians across 8 districts on a collaborative project to revise content and create a much needed OER World History textbook to promote social justice, equity, and anti-racism. Now, our responsibility was not just to provide a free textbook, but to produce a work of value. And incorporating anti-racist content into world history textbooks also means examining the brutalities of slavery, the exploitation of colonial subjects, and the ongoing violence against women and minorities. So while these topics may be difficult to confront, they are essential to understanding the reality of human experiences. I also set up my own YouTube channel to focus on topics that highlight the experiences of colonized peoples in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. And my goal is not to simply add a few random examples to traditional narratives, but to consciously make the histories of marginalized events and historical actors central to history education. Now, demographically, the West represents approximately 10% of the world's population. Yet, Western dominance in historical writing is overwhelming. And what is astonishing is that non-Western writers have successfully been marginalized, even in the production of their own histories. English is the dominant language of historiography, and most of the analytical frameworks are European. In Canvas, I redesigned the modules and all the assignments so that students can identify historical structures of power and inequality, decolonize terminology, and examine resistance movements, and incorporate diverse voices and perspectives. Overall, this has been a great opportunity to reflect on the gaps in historical writing and examine silenced voices. And I noticed that students actively participated in class discussions and they understood why dissent is difficult to exercise, especially when racism is an integral part of governance. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Carol Henke, and I teach art at Fullerton College. I'm grateful to have had the opportunity to be a part of the OFAR cohort this semester, where I've worked on my Introduction to Visual Culture course. I believe the changes I've made have been helpful to my students. I believe they've made the class more anti-racist and more equitable for everyone. I'm excited to show you the things that I've done and how I think they've helped. Two things I'm excited to share about are the changes I made to my syllabus and the addition of more artworks by artists from the global majority that I think really impacted my students. This is an example of a video that I added to my syllabus after attending and participating in a couple of really great seminars about improving our syllabi. This is just much more personal, a warm welcome, in where they can see my face and learn a little bit more about me. I also included this table of expectations, which I saw in some of the presenters' syllabi that I really liked, and I really felt like it reached my students. I had more students describe me in my midterm survey as being kind and warm, and they felt comfortable with me than I've ever had before, and I think that has to come from these changes I've made to the syllabus. The other thing is the addition of more artworks from artists in the global majority. My students do a fantasy art assignment where they select artworks from each module, sort of like fantasy football, only they are choosing an artwork and talking about why they're connected to it and what they learned from it. And I have many students who have selected these newer artworks I've added and recognize their connection to these artworks and feel much more comfortable talking about these than many of the typical artworks that you would see in an introductory art history class.
Hello, my name is Dr. Megan Lorraine Debin, and I'm a professor of art history at Fullerton College, where I teach a course, Art History 135, Latin American Art, Art of Mexico. And in this course, we look at the whole history of Mexican art from ancient indigenous art all the way up to contemporary art. And for my OFAR project, I really wanted to improve the representation of Afro-Mexican artists and their contribution to Mexican art history. So I created a new discussion board, and students really responded really well. They really enjoyed this. Many of them talked about the artist behind me, Juan Correa, who's a really well-known artist in the colonial era of New Spain. But it was sort of news to me even that he was Afro-Mexican. There's so much missing in the historical record. So for me, this was very much a re-education, and it was also an opportunity to share this with my students. And I'm really grateful to my students for coming along on this ride with me. I think we all learned a lot together. They responded really well. The students came up with questions even that they wanted to ask this artist, like what was it like to be Afro-Mexican in this colonial context? I also learned a lot about OER, Open Educational Resources, and I'm working now with my institution. I sort of learned through this process that there really isn't a great OER for Mexican art history. So I'm working with my institution to try to secure funding, and then working with my colleagues in the field and another professor at Fullerton College to create an OER textbook for Mexican art. So I'm really grateful for this program, for the education that I received through the OFAR program. I'm so grateful to my students for coming along on this ride. I'm grateful to my colleagues at Fullerton College and the support from the institution. And, even though I think we're making great strides, there's always more work to be done to dismantle the harmful effects of systemic racism. And I think as an institution, we're really working on this. So the road is long, but we've got the fight in us. So let's keep going.
Hello, my name is Michael Mueller with the Theater Arts Department at Fullerton College. The focus of my OFAR project was twofold. The first was to further my efforts in integrating consent-based practices in the performance classroom, with prioritizing understanding of power dynamics as well as the application of consent in performance spaces. The second was to increase diverse representation in the performance methodologies we engaged with during the semester, specifically styles developed by BIPOC artists. So having worked with consent-based practices through professional intimacy training organizations, I have a basic understanding of creating a consent-based classroom. I've worked with my students before regarding personal boundaries as well as checking in and out with each other. Engaging in conversations rooted in bias, personal privilege, and societal power dynamics created further awareness of the consent-based practices this semester. And the students contributed with personal perspectives, and we unpacked how to engage with consent, whether with other power dynamics and how that the dynamics can cloud transparency and lead to miscommunication and or misunderstanding. Taking the consent work further in this way not only gave more agency to my students of diverse backgrounds to share perspectives, but also normalized the investigation, both personal as well as collective, of true consent and what that means. This information was tied directly into the performance methodologies that we studied and the gender, racial biases inherent in some of the inception of some of these methodologies in their application. Additionally, students were provided the opportunity to research, report, and present on various BIPOC artists who have and are making contributions in the area of performance pedagogy. Originally, the plan was to begin steps towards creating an OER to share with a larger academic and artistic community. However, the first few reports made it clear that student research and understanding of requirements for the creation of OERs was lacking, largely on my part. So I found significant copy-paste results from websites and texts that were missing citations and misquoted. As such, I reduced my scope and am planning to utilize more preparatory documentation and lecture to further the beginnings of the student research this year into next year. As I too am learning more about OER, my hope is to be able to create a resource that serves not only to illuminate an anti-racist approach to acting and performance, but can also support the BIPOC artists doing the work in the industry. Overall, I would say that this project was successful in creating first steps towards something greater, and I look forward to seeing how the project will continue and to evolve next semester. Thank you for this opportunity to learn and grow with you. I appreciate your time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gary Graves, and I am a professor of entrepreneurship at Fullerton College. Today, I'm excited to share my journey toward making my teaching practices more anti-racist and inclusive. First, I made significant changes to my syllabus. I revised it to use first-person language, fostering a more personal connection with my students. The language was carefully chosen to be inclusive and welcoming, ensuring that students from all backgrounds feel seen and respected. This change might seem small, but it has profoundly impacted how students engage with the course material and me as their instructor. Another critical change was adopting a growth mindset approach to grading. Instead of focusing on points and letter grades, I provided detailed feedback when students missed the mark. This allowed students to learn from their mistakes and improve their work, knowing their efforts to revise their work would be recognized and supported. One of the most impactful changes was the introduction of a new module on cultural entrepreneurship in my small business management course. This module highlights the contributions of entrepreneurs from diverse cultural backgrounds and encourages students to incorporate cultural elements into their business ideas. The module includes lectures on cultural entrepreneurship, success stories from Hispanic, Black, and American Indian entrepreneurs, and discussions on building culturally inclusive brands. Students are tasked with researching and sharing stories of entrepreneurs from their own and other ethnic backgrounds, fostering a deeper understanding of diversity in entrepreneurship. The response from students has been positive. These changes have enriched their learning experience and fostered a sense of pride and belonging. It has been inspiring to see students' creativity and innovation flourish as they incorporate their unique cultural perspectives into their projects. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Fullerton College. Please help me welcome LA Valley College with Coach Elisa and team lead, Dr. Brandy Payne, team members, Doc Vic Fusilero, Susanna Marcello, Dr. Keidra Morris, and Magda Walsh. Welcome. The presentation.
Hello, Dr. Brandy Payne from Los Angeles Valley College. The course I'm highlighting is Introduction to Business. One key point I want to make as part of my OFAR plan is I wanted to connect the chapter's content to students' culture and race. One way I did that, I believe, is through my group discussion prompts. So here I have a few examples of the group discussion prompts that I presented. One, regarding the chapter on entrepreneurship and management, I asked students to tell me, who do you believe to be a successful entrepreneur and manager, and explain why. I encouraged students to provide pictures as it was a diverse course. And so I wanted to see all of those beautiful images, and I wanted other students to see those as well. For the chapter on human resources, I introduced diversity as a competitive advantage. I introduced diversity, equity, and inclusion, created a short PowerPoint presentation about it, and then I asked students to find images that relate DE and/or I and explain why. On the chapter about technology, I introduced the concept of racial biases in technology, and I introduced Dr. Benjamin's work. And so in doing so, I hope that students were able to see themselves in the content and to see race.
Hi, my name is Vic Fusilero. I'm professor of German and chair of Department of World Languages and Cultures here at Los Angeles Valley College. An important module that I included in this semester was a minorities in Germany. This was a new cultural module featuring YouTube video interviews with Germans of diverse backgrounds, such as Turkish Germans and Afro-Germans, as well as Asian Germans, the three largest minorities in Germany. And I also had an introductory video, basically introducing short interviews of foreigners living in Germany. So not just German citizens, but foreigners. Two of these videos, these are just screenshots of those videos. One was what is life like as a foreigner in Germany? And then a very important one is from the Deutsche Welle German Cultural Institution called Afro-Germany, Being Black and German. And feedback from my German 1 students was positive, especially from one of my Black female students who's married to a white German, who saw her experiences living in Germany represented in these videos.
Hello, everyone. My name is Susanna Marcello. I'm a professor of English at Los Angeles Valley College.
and I'm excited to show you what I've done for OFAR this semester. I have a anti-racist poetry lesson plan. One of the learning objectives for English 101 is to demonstrate an understanding of multicultural values by reading diverse texts. In this lesson plan, they do what's called windows and mirrors, where they examine various parts of diverse poetry, and we look at places where they either connect with the material, a mirror, or they don't connect with the material, a window. The other thing I have for you is this banner, Anti-Racism is for Everyone. This banner can be used in Canvas. I have it here at the beginning of module number 4, where they do a research project where they tap into their funds of knowledge. This is the research project prompt. Here's another banner that I created as well. And the research project allows them to choose between doing a VoiceThread project or a traditional paper, but they have to choose something that is of value to them, and they research this aspect of it. The last part is a Jeopardy game. We did these throughout the semester, and the students got various parts of our critical thinking and rhetoric, and they actually put these into questions and answers. Thank you so much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Magda Walsh. I teach ESL non-credit at the Los Angeles Valley College. For the spring semester, I'm teaching Speech 1. Our campus is working towards social justice and racial equity. I'd like to show you one of my modules that discusses the selected campus action plan objective, highlighted in yellow. I believe in the power of storytelling and how personal experiences can encourage us. The first story is about ID, a formerly undocumented student who shares her educational and personal struggles and victories. The second one contains inspiring testimonials from LAVC professors. This module includes career development resources on campus and an assignment requesting feedback from students. Another module to highlight is exploring the cultural tapestry of Los Angeles. That also includes information about Hollywood, the dream city for performers, and a discussion about the controversy that the Oscar award ceremonies don't always seem to recognize the talent of different ethnic groups. Thank you very much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kiefer Morris, and I'm from Los Angeles Valley College, where I teach African American Studies. For my project, I focused on my African American literature class. And while I do believe that what I teach is inherently anti-racist, through taking the OFAR course, I did learn that there were certain things that I was taking for granted, and there were certain ways in which I could draw more attention to some of the anti-racist efforts that we've been discussing throughout the year. So one of the things I did was make sure that I restructured the course a bit. I provided a liquid syllabus. I changed the syllabus to include contract grading. I provided lots of feedback on essay and multiple rewrites, and I also altered the grading scale. I also tried to give them curriculum choices. So even though we all have a course outline of record that we have to adhere to, within that, I was trying to think of ways in which I could allow them some choice within it. So for example, this particular unit on the Harlem Renaissance, I would give them the historical context and then allow them to choose which theme they'd like to explore, and then focus a bit more on that, and then choose the text as they move through. Another thing that I included and wanted to make sure that they were aware of was the way in which African American literature is included within this idea of an American literary canon. We had discussions about what gets included, what's excluded, and why. And I used Toni Morrison and bell hooks to further explore that with the students. Thank you.
Thank you, LA Valley College. All right, so we will move on to Palomar next. Next up, we have Palomar College with Coach Anna Garcia. Team lead is Nicole. Team members Cynthia or Cindy, Jose or Joe Braceno, Richard Carr Jr., and Heather Pham.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is our privilege to be here today from Palomar College. We'll start by introducing ourselves.
Hi, I'm Nicole Mark. I am nursing faculty.
Hi, I'm Cindy Anfinson, mathematics faculty.
Hi, I'm Joe Briseño, sociology faculty.
Hi, my name is Heather Pham. I'm child development faculty.
And I'm Richard Carr, English faculty.
We've had wonderful support from our coach, Ana Garcia, who is a chemistry faculty member from Monterey College. While we have each individualized our work, there are areas of collective action we'd like to highlight, such as decolonizing our syllabi, revising our grading policies, utilizing zero-cost course materials, and/or exploring expanded use of these, and implementing non-disposable assignments.
Hi, I'm going to focus on my two favorite areas of change and improvements to my course. The first is diversified lecture content and coursework. One of the insights I gained from OFAR is that nursing education does not accurately present content regarding BIPOC individuals in healthcare. I added resources for assessment of different skin colors, and we explored overt policies and systems which perpetuate structural racism and medical racism specifically, including discussions on oppression. The new content reflected the current and past healthcare environment. Some students were aware of these disparities, but many were not. I provided interventions the students may utilize as nurse advocates to combat overt racism in healthcare. And I also added an assignment which explored their nursing identity. Students reviewed the identity wheel and wheel of privilege. We openly discussed how their identities could influence their roles as nurses and their collaboration within healthcare teams. The students led discussions on many topics related to their identity, including racism in healthcare, medical trauma, and the challenges faced by dark-skinned women in healthcare, and advocacy for patients unable to access care. My hope in making these changes was to empower students, validate their experiences, and ensure they understand their importance to any healthcare team. Next slide.
My focus this semester was on my Child Development 115 class, where we examined the socialization of children. This class is part of an apprenticeship program for 22 students to become preschool teachers. And from assessing barriers with these same students last semester, I worked with my colleagues to establish a study hour for students so that we could eliminate two of their primary barriers, which were access to reliable technology for their classwork and time where they can focus on school outside of the demands of their home lives. We provide individualized support in a computer lab for an hour after class every week for these students. Additionally, I created a unit on culturally responsive work with children and families, which highlighted anti-racism, implicit bias, and applications for these in early childhood. Moving away from a research paper for the final project, I co-created a new final project with these students. Each student created a fictional child, added information to these children every few weeks, and now at the end of the semester, their project allowed them to envision themselves as the preschool teachers they will soon be to these 22 children. They created a report or presentation with the modality of their choice to their preschool directors, discussing some of the social influences, systemic barriers, and family engagement strategies for their specific class of students. Here's a picture I took from one of our classes where we had class discussion about the ways that culture may influence childhood or parenthood, along with discussion of how our awareness or lack of awareness may impact the relationship between the teacher and the family.
Hello, colleagues. I'll share 3 assignments. First, I started by introducing an identity wheel activity as a framework for intersectionality, which included markers of identity such as race, class, gender, ability, and a few others. The overall student response was positive. One student said that it taught them that they were assessing life circumstances through their own experiences and often paid little to no attention to those markers of identity that were much different from their own. The activity set the groundwork for the next assignment. The second phase was a project-based assignment that students developed throughout the term. As we learned about social justice statistics, we started by learning about characteristic or demographic variables using an open source survey. These were variables much like our markers of identity from the identity wheel assignment. As the course progressed, students learned how to run statistical analysis tests using variables based on markers of identity. For example, some students ran a significance test by exploring differences in wealth, income, health, and job satisfaction, among others, between racial groups. The next stage, I wanted the students to think beyond the findings. This led to the final assignment. Being anti-racist and anti-oppressive, as we discussed in OFAR, is an active process. It means we not only need to raise our own consciousness about race and racism, but to also take action in our everyday practices. For this reflection, I asked students to reflect back on the Becoming Anti-Racist illustration to assess their own growth, as well as anti-oppressive principles that we discussed throughout the term. As of this recording, I don't have those results yet, but I'm looking forward to reading student responses. Thank you for listening. Next slide.
Hi, in my Math 140 Calculus 1 class, I am currently working with other math faculty. We are developing a high-dosage tutoring pilot program. Teams of 3 tutors attended several classes each week. Students work on problems together, and the tutors and I walk around helping students. Our goal is to connect with every student at least once during the class. I check in with students who I'm concerned about via Canvas and provide resources and support. I implemented equitable grading practices, including makeups on 2 of the 4 unit exams and flexible homework due dates. All class notes are accessible and posted on Canvas. Students print them out or use their tablets to take notes in class. The class examples and problems are blank for students to fill in. The Spotlight on a Modern Mathematician feature highlights a recent mathematician from a minoritized community. Students then created a discussion board post about a modern STEM professional in their major, why they selected this person, what interested them about their work, and what obstacles this person overcame. For open pedagogy, I created a Canvas wiki for students to contribute to the final exam review problem sets. Next slide.
The class I revamped for OFAR was English 202 Critical Thinking and Intermediate Composition. Here's a list highlighting some changes that went over well. First, I redesigned my first unit, which involved students critically thinking about themselves into a 4-part portfolio project. The students showed a great deal of vulnerability, and most said that it was a very therapeutic process overall. Next slide. Here are some of the collages I received. Second, I expanded my unit on symbolism and dove into different cultural symbols outside of the US, including the Adinkra symbols used in Ghana and the Ivory Coast. It concluded a group activity where students had to decode the symbols and then create a new symbol that represents themselves. Next slide. Overall, the students gave me positive feedback in their reflections, and they appreciated having more creative freedom and autonomy with their assignments. Next slide.
So in closing, our OFAR team will present our work at the Fall 24 plenary. Our institution continues to offer a strong professional development program with anti-racist work centered throughout. During the program review process, departments and disciplines are examining disaggregated data for courses and programs. Faculty evaluations are being revised to include several DEIAA components. In summer 24, our college is offering the Faculty Cultural Curriculum Teaching Institute, where faculty examine disaggregated data from their own courses and learn culturally responsive practices to enhance the completion and success of disproportionately impacted students. Next slide. Continuing work is being done on campus for ZCT and OER course materials. Student success teams are being debuted this year to increase the success, retention, and completion. Our first cohort is our Black African American students, and we are looking to expand to other DI groups as well. Anti-racist work is receiving strong support from our campus leadership. Next slide. Our work continues, and we thank you for allowing us to participate in OFAR.
Last but not least, we have Taft College. Coach is Hosana, and team leader is Salvador. Team members, Michelle, Darcy, Kelly, and Michelle.
Greetings, everyone. The following presentation is a summative explanation of what our Taft College OFAR team executed during the spring semester of 2024. Our team was made up of the following individuals: Darcy Bogle, counselor and professor of psychology; Michelle Beasley, professor of early childhood development; Michelle Oya, professor of psychology; Kelly Kolzner-Reyes, professor of English and Spanish; and myself, Salvador Jimenez Murguia. I teach sociology and ethnic studies. Before we begin, I'd like to share a bit about our community. We work at Taft College in the city of Taft, California, a city of just over 9,000 people located about 35 miles west of Bakersfield, California, in Kern County. The college itself employs nearly 120 faculty members with a pretty even split between full-time and contingent faculty, teaching some 5,700 students. Now for a little history about the city of Taft, which I feel is important to the overall interest, participation, and experience in the OFAR program. Like all places, Taft definitely has a history, and one that's not necessarily a history that many would like to speak about, much less incorporate into the overall branding that our college prides itself in. Formerly referred to as Moron, Taft was renamed in honor of President William H. Taft, yes, that Taft, the once governor of the Philippines during the U.S. colonial occupations of its islands. That same Taft that referred to Filipinos as Americans' quote-unquote little brown brothers. And that same Taft that told President William McKinley that Americans would need, quote, 50 or 100 years of close supervision to develop anything resembling Anglo-Saxon political principles and skills, end quote. Taft, a place where our Filipino students take these very classes in the Anglo-Saxon political principles and skills, among other things, to which that President, Taft, was referring. In brief, and as it relates to race, racism, and anti-racism, Taft was also a sundown town. For those that aren't familiar with the term sundown town, this refers to towns that were made up of nearly all white residents and practiced explicit forms of racial discrimination through intimidation, violence, and physical isolation. One of the notable characteristics of these sundown towns was their actual signage that displayed racist sentiments about their intolerance for non-white individuals. According to Michael Eisinger, a Fresno historian that's researched the Central Valley extensively, the sign that demarcated the city limits upon entering Taft read, quote, "Nigger, don't let the sun set on you here," end quote. As the enterprise of revisionism often does, the history, like the sign, is now just a sign, void of its signifier and signified. But the sentiment remained. This sentiment of racism, both symbolic and otherwise, was marbled into the community, and although there's no shortage of instances that substantiate its presence, one incident in particular still haunts Taft, especially Taft College. That incident was the way it once lost its entire black population in a matter of one day. As documented in the June 1975 issue of Sports Illustrated, on 25 May 1975, several carloads of whites attacked 3 black members of the football team while walking through campus. One of the armed white attackers, who was later charged with attempted murder, was shot. Although the initial fight was broken up, at least a dozen white locals waited outside the apartment when the students attempted to make their way to the campus. Another fight ensued, and by early evening, 60 whites stormed the dormitory with chants of, quote, "Kill the niggers," end quote. Local police eventually freed the trapped black students and transported them to Bakersfield, escorting the entire 1975 population of African American students, 13 of them, out of Taft indefinitely. The reason why this historical information is so relevant today, and certainly relevant to this OFAR presentation, is precisely that our team works, engaging in labor pursuant to our species' beings, in a place that still fosters, however so subtle, a tradition so admittedly resistant to change. There's too much detail to cover here, but just know that our efforts, and the efforts of a handful of some of our other colleagues, make up a group that actively pushes for a paradigm shift. As a survey of our OFAR work, Professor Bogle took an equity-minded approach to transforming her course content by decolonizing her syllabus, adding community-building items, incorporating culturally responsive teaching, and standards-based grading. Professor Beasley mixed it up with her early care, education, and family studies course by introducing a new OER textbook that better addresses the diverse concerns of her students. She didn't do this unilaterally, however, as she solicited the input of the students themselves, having them compare and contrast this new text with the original one that's often used in this class. In this way, her efforts drew upon the principles of collectivity and communal-based resources. She and her students settled on a new text, an OER text that better incorporates anti-racism, diversity, and inclusion. Above all, she was able to prioritize voice, in particular the voices of her students, which is often lost in the traditional model of teaching for the sake of simply teaching, regardless of whether anything is ever taught or anyone ever learns. Perhaps taking some cues from cutting-edge research on subtraction by Leidy Colts, Professor Oya pulled back from immediate implementation of her interest in teaching qualitative research methods and gave both herself and her students some time to think about how this type of research could be taught as well as learned most effectively. Professor Oya completed outside training in intersectional qualitative analysis and pieced together readings that focused on both indigenous ways of knowing and decolonizing research traditions. With this content in mind, she was able to establish an accompanying lab for future courses. Additionally, her commitment to open pedagogy allowed her to set up long-term goals in dialogue with this training and research. Professor Colson-Reyes assembled a 4-part plan that reached into just about every part of the teaching and learning experience. She put in the time creating a liquid syllabus, complete with a mini video and an introduction letter to her students. Next, in an effort to decolonize her syllabus, she rewrote its academic integrity section in a thoughtful and student-centered fashion. She also incorporated some of Joe Feldman's work on grading through an equity-minded lens, with the overall goal of reducing bias in the evaluation process. And finally, Colson-Reyes did some curriculum revisions, adding important literary works associated with racial awareness. Lastly, there was me. My work was multifaceted, and given that my 2 areas of teaching at TAF, both sociology and ethnic studies, lend themselves to this anti-racism work, I applied as much relevant content to all of my face-to-face courses. I focused on empowerment and providing resources, options, and tools to navigate colonized spaces. Everything from filing official complaints about professors and police officers to managing time, budgets, and demeanor in spaces that situate us in a state of double consciousness. I also removed rote-oriented testing and replaced it with public sociology and public ethnic studies activities, like making t-shirts that initiate discussion for ethnography and activism, as well as surveying our peers for posts on our walls about everything from microaggressions and feelings of discomfort as students of color in courses geared toward teaching the privileged. We also decolonized our classroom, both physically and philosophically, to provide perspective on what learning without domination and power imbalances might look like. I also had my students write letters to the next cohort, documenting their experience, encouraging the next generation of learners, and overall creating a record that they were indeed actually there in a space that wasn't intended for them, but due to the efforts of their ancestors and movements of change, opened up the gates, doors, and windows for them to partake. On behalf of Taft College OFAR team, that was definitely that.
Not be able to stay home, brother. You will not be able to plug in, turn on, and cop out. You will not be able to lose yourself on Skag and skip out for beer during commercials because the revolution will not be televised.
That was awesome, Taft. Really great work, illustrations and narrations. Amazing work, and amazing work, everyone. We're actually only 2 minutes
For some
over
reason
time,
I can't hear even though she's not muted.
which is
Who's
yeah.
burning?
Somebody's audio is coming in. Thank you. We're only 2 minutes over time, which is really impressive considering our rocky start there. And I really appreciate everyone's patience with some of these. I'm gonna blame Zoom for the problems. We do have a few closing things to talk about, and I want to respect everyone's time here. We're at 1:33, so if you need to log off, please feel free to log off. I will be sending a heavily edited recording of our team showcases later on, probably sometime during the weekend. But again, congratulations to everyone. I feel super inspired. I've learned a lot just from watching these showcases and feel like I want to take everyone's classes. It brings a really new dimension to teaching and learning, and deep learning about the society and the world that we live in and how can we be better prepared, and better prepare our students to coexist. So, and I do want to open it up just for a few minutes of comments if anybody wants to say something before I move on to the rest of the slides. Okay, so let me get going here.
I have a question about who did the illustrations for Taft College. I didn't see a credit, but those were magnificent.
I think Sal can probably answer that for you if he's still on. He might not be.
Okay, just brilliant. Needs a credit. Yeah.
He did use a program called Runway, so maybe it's somewhere through that.
Okay, so just a few closing notes here. I'm gonna jam through this really quickly. We have a participant survey coaching experience on the coaching experience. So if you have not filled that out yet, we definitely want to hear what your experience was. Next year is year 5, and we are collecting information for interest in participation in year 5. So you can go ahead and scan the code. Oh, and of course, my sharing is paused for some reason. Ay, ay, ay. All right, let's see. I think we can all see that. So you can go ahead and scan the code for year 5 if you think that your college would like to reapply and have another cohort join us for next year. We are doing a bunch of things probably prior to year 5 in an effort for everyone to keep up with OFAR. One of those things is going to be development of a community of practice on OEG Connect. And the second will be a mailing list. I promise I won't spam you. I don't have the time to spam anyone, but we'll hopefully send out monthly mailers to just keep people informed about conferences and events and what's going on in the world of OFAR and anti-racism. So if you have any interest in either of those two things, please go ahead and scan the QR code. And I emailed everyone this. We are going to be at the online teaching conference later this month from June 25th to June 28th. On June 26th, we are having an OFAR dinner and you are cordially invited. If you have not RSVP'd yet, please go ahead and you can scan that QR code. It will take you to a sign-up sheet for dinner. We're doing dinner at the Seabirds Kitchen in Long Beach. I have a reservation for 15 and we're not quite filled up yet and they might be able to accommodate more. So if you're interested in coming and you're going to be there, please go ahead and sign up. And staying in the loop with CCC OER, keep a lookout for upcoming conferences on the website. You can join the community email and you can read some of our EDI blog posts and student OER impact stories also on the CCC OER website. And finally, how did we do? We had a few hiccups today with Zoom, so please go ahead and scan this QR code and be brutally honest. Also, tell us how we did overall during your OFAR experience. We would really, really appreciate that. It will help us make improvements for next year. Okay. All right, so that is it for our final showcases. Again, congratulations to all of our participants, all of our team leaders, and particularly all of our coaches who have worked very hard to guide our teams. Oh, yes. Thank you, Kim, for reminding me. And there are badges of completion that will be on their way to you, and you will be free to append that to your email signature or anything that you would like. And those are going to be coming from Kim Grew, one of our course developers and facilitators. So please look out for an email from Kim. And thank you so much, Kim, for doing that. All right. So thanks, Kim. So that is it. It's been a whirlwind, amazing year with all of you. Please, if you would like to join our email newsletter and get on OEG Connect with us so that we can keep in touch with each other and share our work and engage in future collaborations. Bye, Kim.